The massive ships appeared without warning. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their metal hulls gleaming under the distant sunlight. There were hundreds of them, each larger than the largest cities on Earth. The Galactic Empire had arrived, just as humanity had been preparing for over the last century. In the United Earth Defense Command Center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral James Walker stood calmly watching the main display. His weathered face showed no signs of panic as more and more enemy ships appeared on the screen. Around him, military officers worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. There was no chaos, no fear, only the quiet hum of machines and the soft sound of fingers typing on keyboards. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," reported Lieutenant Tom Davis, his voice steady. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Walker nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The creature had gray skin and 4 eyes, but its expression of superiority was unmistakably clear. When it spoke, the universal translator converted its words into English. "People of Earth," the alien commander said, "I am High Admiral Keth of the Galactic Empire. Your planet is now under Imperial control. Surrender your weapons and submit to Imperial rule. Resistance is pointless. We have conquered 300 species across 1,000 worlds. You have 1 Earth hour to comply." The alien's speech ended, and the screen returned to showing the fleet positions. Walker looked around the command center, meeting the eyes of his officers. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Their parents and grandparents had trained for it too. "Send them our prepared response," Walker ordered. Davis pressed a few buttons. On the screen, their message appeared. "We strongly advise you to reconsider. For your own sake." Minutes passed. The Empire's ships held their position, their weapons still dormant. Walker knew they were probably scanning Earth, trying to assess its defenses. Let them look, he thought. They wouldn't find anything. Not yet. The alien commander appeared on screen again. This time, there was a hint of amusement in his 4 eyes. "You dare to threaten the Empire? Your primitive weapons are nothing compared to our fleet. We detect no orbital defenses, no energy shields, no fleet worthy of mention. What possible threat could you pose?" Walker stepped forward. "This is Admiral James Walker of Earth. You're right. You don't see our defenses. That's because we don't want you to see them. We've been preparing for this moment for over 100 years. Every war we fought among ourselves has taught us something. Every conflict has made us stronger. We're giving you 1 chance to leave peacefully." The alien commander laughed. The sound was strange through the translator. "You speak boldly for a species that has never left its own star system. What do you know of war?" Walker's reply was quiet but firm. "We know enough to warn you instead of striking first. We know enough to give you a chance to avoid what's coming. Humanity has fought countless wars. High Admiral, we've mastered the art of killing each other. Do you really want to find out what we can do to an outside threat?" The Empire's response was to move their fleet closer to Earth. Warning shots flashed across the void, missing Earth's atmosphere by mere kilometers. A classic show of force. In the command center, Walker pressed a button on his chair. Red lights began flashing silently throughout the facility. Around the world, similar lights were turning on in other command centers. Below the surface of the Earth, in hidden bunkers and secret facilities, machinery that had waited decades began to power up. "Send the historical files," Walker commanded. "Show them what they're getting into." Davis nodded and transmitted the carefully prepared package of humanity's military history. Videos of world wars, nuclear tests, modern combat footage. Everything that showed what humans were capable of when pushed into conflict. In orbit, the Empire's ships continued their approach, unaware that Earth's surface was coming alive with hidden defenses. The massive gun batteries buried in mountains began to warm up. Orbital platforms shimmered as their cloaking fields prepared to drop. And in hidden underwater bases around the world, humanity's real fleet waited for the order to surface. Walker watched it all with a grim expression. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the Empire had made their choice. They would learn soon enough why Earth had never been invaded successfully. They would learn why humanity had warned them to run. On board the Imperial flagship, Intelligence Officer Mark Reed of Earth's Deep Cover Unit watched as the Empire's analysts reviewed the data package from Earth. He had been planted here years ago, his alien disguise perfect down to the cellular level. Now he observed their reactions with hidden satisfaction. The lead analyst, a high-ranking Imperial named Rek, stared at the screens with all four eyes wide open. Images of Earth's wars played before him. Tanks rolling across battlefields, aircraft carriers launching jets, nuclear explosions rising into mushroom clouds. The analyst's gray skin had turned several shades paler. "This can't be real," Rek whispered. "No species fights wars like this." Another analyst looked up from his station. "Sir, I've confirmed the footage. It's authentic. These humans, they've fought thousands of wars among themselves. The scale of combat is beyond anything in Imperial records." Reed remembered his briefing about the Empire's history. They had evolved as a cooperative species, expanding through diplomacy and show of force. Their conquests usually involved a single demonstration of power, followed by immediate surrender. The concept of prolonged warfare was foreign to them. The room fell silent as footage from World War II filled the main screen. Massive armies clashed across continents. Cities burned. Millions fought and died. When the atomic bombs fell, several analysts had to leave the room. How could they survive this? Rek asked nobody in particular. How could any species do this to itself and survive? Reed knew the answer. Humanity hadn't just survived, it had learned. Each war had taught new lessons. Each conflict had driven innovation. Humanity had turned its greatest weakness, the ability to wage war, into its greatest strength. On another screen, modern combat footage played. Special Forces operations, drone strikes, cyber warfare. The Empire's analysts watched as humanity's way of war evolved before their eyes. Their reports began flowing to the Imperial War Council. High Admiral Keth received the reports in his private chamber. His confident expression faded as he read. "They have weapons that can destroy entire cities. They've had them for over a century. And they've kept fighting even after developing them." His aide, trembling slightly, nodded. "Yes, sir. And there's more. They're soldiers. They volunteer to fight. They choose to go to war. Our psychologists can't understand it. Our species has to be forced into combat. Humans train for it willingly." In the Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Walker received an update from Reed through their quantum-encrypted channel. "The package has been delivered," he read. "Their reaction is exactly as predicted, requesting permission to proceed with Phase 2. Walker smiled. Phase 2 would show the Empire something even more terrifying: humanity's capacity for defensive preparation. He typed his response. "Permission granted. Show them the bunkers." Back on the Imperial flagship, Reed quietly uploaded new files to the analysis system. These showed the vast underground cities humanity had built, the stockpiles of resources, the hidden factories that could switch to military production in hours. Decades of preparing for alien contact had created a network of defensive infrastructure unlike anything the Empire had seen. The analysts' reactions grew more concerned with each new revelation. One of them found records of humanity's space defense program, showing how they had deliberately kept their military capabilities hidden. Another discovered files about human psychological warfare techniques. "Sir," an analyst called to Rek, "I'm seeing references to something called guerrilla warfare in their military doctrine, and mutually assured destruction. The translation doesn't make sense." Rek had been studying Earth's military history for hours now. He understood enough to be terrified. "It makes perfect sense," he said quietly. "They're telling us they're willing to destroy everything, including themselves, to remain free. And they know 1,000 ways to do it." In his hidden position, Reed watched as the Empire's confidence crumbled. They had expected to find another easy conquest. Instead, they had found humanity, a species that had turned war into an art form, that had spent centuries perfecting the craft of combat, that had built an entire civilization ready to transform into a war machine at a moment's notice. And they hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. The Earth changed in less than 6 hours. Like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, humanity's peaceful shell cracked open to reveal something else entirely. In the Midwest of the United States, massive grain fields split apart as missile silos rose from underground. Farmers calmly walked away from their tractors, entering hidden bunkers where combat suits waited. They had practiced this their whole lives. Admiral Walker watched the transformation from his command center. "Status report," he ordered. Lieutenant Davis checked his screens. "All orbital platforms decloaking on schedule, sir. Moon Base Alpha through Delta reporting ready. Mars defense grid online. Asteroid belt mines activated." The Empire's fleet hung in space, still watching. Their sensors were going crazy as Earth's defenses revealed themselves one by one. Hidden weapons platforms that had looked like communications satellites dropped their disguises. The moon's surface rippled as hidden bases activated their shields. In orbit, 12 massive ships appeared out of nowhere. They had been there for decades, hidden by technology that the Empire didn't even know was possible. Each ship was built inside an asteroid, using materials mined from space. They were humanity's first line of real defense. "Sir," Davis reported, "Factory Complex 1 through 20 are online. Weapon production starting. All citizen soldiers reporting to their stations. Global military readiness at 85% and climbing." Walker nodded. They had planned this for generations. Every citizen had a role. Every building had a purpose. Earth's entire civilization was designed to transform into a war machine if needed. On the Imperial flagship, the sensors officer was panicking. "Hi, Admiral. We're detecting energy signatures everywhere. Their planet. It's armed to the teeth. Those readings, they're impossible." High Admiral Keth stared at the data in disbelief. Where there had been no defenses an hour ago, now there were thousands. The humans hadn't been lying about their preparation. His ship detected new signals every minute as more weapons and shields came online. Back on Earth, the hidden facilities under major cities hummed to life. In London, Paris, Beijing, and 100 other locations, underground factories began producing weapons and ammunition. The designs had been ready for years, waiting for this moment. "Experimental Weapons Division reporting ready," Davis announced. "Dr. Phillips requests permission to deploy the quantum arsenal." Walker smiled. The Empire didn't know about quantum weapons yet. Humanity had kept its best technology completely hidden, developing it in secret over decades. "Tell Phillips to wait," he ordered. "Let's not show all our cards at once." In cities across the world, civilians calmly walked to their assigned shelters. There was no panic, no chaos. Everyone knew what to do. They had practiced in drills since childhood. The streets emptied as people moved underground, where comfortable living spaces waited. "Civilian evacuation 60% complete," Davis reported. "All military personnel in position. Enhanced soldier units reporting ready." The enhanced soldiers were another secret. Volunteers who had undergone careful genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement, creating warriors beyond anything the Empire could imagine. They looked normal on the outside, but they were far from it. In orbit, the Empire's sensors detected something new. A field of tiny objects spread through space around Earth. They were robots, each one smaller than a car, but armed with weapons that could cut through Imperial shields like paper. Millions of them formed an invisible web around the planet. "Sir," Davis said, "final defense grid is online. We're at full military readiness." Walker looked at the main screen. Earth's transformation was complete. Every satellite was now a weapon platform. Every city was protected by shields. Every citizen was in position, ready to fight if needed. Humanity had spent a century preparing for this moment. The Admiral opened a channel to the Imperial fleet. "This is Earth Command to Imperial forces. As you can see, we are not defenseless. We are not unprepared. This is your final warning. Leave our space, or face the consequences of your decision." In the silence that followed, humanity's true nature was finally visible to the galaxy. They were not just another primitive species to be conquered. They were warriors who had spent generations preparing for this exact moment. And they were ready to prove it. High Admiral Keth made his decision. Begin the attack. Show these humans the true power of the Empire. 1,000 Imperial ships opened fire at once. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled space, racing toward Earth. It was enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The Empire had used this same attack pattern to destroy 300 other civilizations. In the Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Walker watched calmly. Activate shield network. Lieutenant Davis pressed a single button. Around Earth, thousands of hidden satellites created an energy field that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. The Empire's weapons hit the shield and simply disappeared. "Impossible," Keth shouted as he watched his attack vanish. "Nothing can absorb that much energy." Walker's voice came over the Empire's communications. "We learned how to redirect energy a long time ago. Would you like to see what we did with yours?" The shield network glowed bright blue. All the energy from the Empire's attack had been captured and stored. Now it fired back at the Imperial fleet, but not as a simple reflection. The energy had been changed, improved, made deadlier. 20 Imperial ships exploded before they could raise their shields. 30 more lost their engines and began drifting in space. The Empire had never lost so many ships in a single moment. "Launch fighters," Keth ordered. 10,000 small Imperial ships poured out of the larger vessels, heading toward Earth like angry wasps. Walker pressed a button on his chair. "Release the drones." The millions of small robots that surrounded Earth came to life. They moved faster than anything the Empire had ever seen. Each drone was controlled by an AI that could think 1,000 times faster than any living pilot. The Imperial fighters didn't stand a chance. "Sir," Davis reported, "enemy fighters being eliminated. 80% destroyed. 90%. 95%. In space, the battle looked like a light show. Imperial fighters exploded by the hundreds as Earth's drones cut through them with precision. Not a single drone was lost. The Empire's best pilots found themselves outmaneuvered by machines they couldn't even track on their sensors. Keth stared in horror as his fighter squadrons vanished. "Launch the second wave. All ships, advance." The remaining Imperial ships moved forward, firing everything they had. This time they aimed at different targets: the Moon, Mars, the orbital platforms. Surely the humans couldn't defend everything at once. They were wrong. Each human defensive position had its own shield network. More than that, they had weapons that the Empire had never imagined. The Moon's surface opened up to reveal massive gun batteries. Mars launched swarms of automated defenders. The asteroid belt itself seemed to come alive as hidden weapons activated. "Admiral," Davis said, "enemy fleet is in position. Quantum weapons are ready." Walker nodded. "Show them what humanity can really do." "Activate weapons platform Alpha." A single satellite, no bigger than a car, emerged from its hiding place. It fired just once. The beam that came out looked like a thin line of blue light. When it touched an Imperial ship, something impossible happened. The ship didn't explode. Instead, it simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. No debris, no explosion, just nothing. "What was that?" Keth's voice shook as he watched another ship vanish. "What kind of weapons are these?" "Quantum deletion," Walker replied calmly. "We found a way to remove matter from reality itself. Would you like to see more?" The Imperial fleet began to retreat. Ship after ship jumped into hyperspace, running from weapons they couldn't understand or fight. For the first time in its history, the Empire was running away. In the command center, Davis looked at his screens. "Sir, enemy fleet is retreating. We destroyed 30% of their forces. Not a single human casualty." Walker stood up and straightened his uniform. "Send a message to all Earth forces. Phase 1 complete. Prepare for counterattack." The first battle was over. Humanity had just shown the galaxy what they could do, and they were just getting started. 3 days after the Empire's failed attack, Admiral Walker stood in front of the holographic map showing Imperial space. Red dots marked thousands of Empire worlds and bases. But what the Empire didn't know was that humanity had mapped their territory decades ago. "Launch Operation Shadow," Walker ordered. Across the solar system, sleek black ships appeared from their hiding places. They had been waiting for years, crews training in secret. Each ship carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But their real power was something else. They could move without being detected. "All stealth fleets reporting ready," Lieutenant Davis announced. "Ag combat systems online. First wave targeting data uploaded." The human ships moved like ghosts through space. They had studied Empire patrol routes and sensor patterns for years. Not a single Imperial ship detected them as they slipped past the border defenses. On the Imperial capital world, High Admiral Keth was still trying to explain his fleet's defeat when the first attacks began. Communication centers across Imperial space went dark. Defense stations exploded without warning. Supply lines were cut in seconds. "Sir," an Imperial officer shouted, "we're under attack. But we can't see them. There's nothing on our sensors." Keth rushed to the command center. Reports were coming in from everywhere. Human ships appeared out of nowhere, struck with impossible precision, and vanished again. They hit military targets only, leaving civilian areas untouched. This wasn't just an attack, it was a message. Back in Earth's command center, Walker watched the operation unfold. Status report. Davis checked his screens. First wave successful. 30% of Empire military infrastructure destroyed. 0 casualties on our side. Enemy still unable to track our ships. The Empire tried to fight back. They sent fleets to protect their key worlds. But the human ships were always one step ahead. They had studied every Imperial tactic, every response pattern. Earth's AI warfare systems predicted the Empire's moves before they made them. "They're spreading their forces thin," Davis reported. "Exactly as predicted." Walker nodded. The Empire was doing exactly what humans expected, trying to defend everything at once. It was what the Empire had always done. But against human tactics, it was the worst possible choice. "Launch Phase 2, Walker ordered. "Show them what guerrilla warfare looks like in space." Small teams of human ships began hitting Empire worlds in random patterns. They would appear, cause havoc, and disappear before the Empire could respond. Sometimes they hit military bases. Sometimes they just flew past civilian areas, proving they could reach anywhere in Empire space. The psychological effect was devastating. Imperial military morale collapsed. Soldiers refused to board ships, knowing they might vanish without trace. Fleet commanders jumped at shadows, firing at empty space because they feared human stealth technology. "Sir," Davis said, "we're picking up widespread communications from Empire worlds. Their citizens are demanding withdrawal from human space. Their economy is starting to crash from military spending." The Empire had never faced an enemy like this. They were used to direct confrontation, to enemies they could see and fight. Humanity's approach was completely alien to them. Walker opened a channel to all human ships. "Begin final phase. Target their command and control centers." Across Imperial space, the most important military headquarters began to disappear. Not destroyed, just gone, erased by quantum weapons. The Empire's carefully organized military structure fell apart in hours. "Enemy forces in chaos," Davis reported. "Their fleet formations are breaking up. Multiple Imperial worlds are declaring neutrality. Their central government is evacuating their capital. Walker allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had just demonstrated why they had warned the Empire to run. They hadn't just beaten the Empire's military, they had broken their entire way of war. Send a message to Imperial High Command, Walker ordered. Tell them we're ready to discuss terms. Remind them that we've only used a fraction of our real military power, and suggest they think very carefully about their response. The counterattack had worked perfectly. Now it was time to see if the Empire had learned its lesson about underestimating humanity. The Imperial War Council gathered in their backup command center, hidden deep underground on a colony world. Their magnificent capital chamber had vanished 3 days ago, erased by human quantum weapons. Now the most powerful leaders in the galaxy sat on simple chairs, fear visible in their 4 eyes. High Admiral Keth stood before them, his uniform no longer perfectly pressed. My lords, the situation is grave. We've lost contact with 30% of our military bases. Another 40% report severe damage. And we still can't detect human ships until they're right on top of us. The head counselor, an ancient Imperial named Dex, leaned forward. How? How can they be everywhere at once? Our empire spans thousands of light years. A military analyst stepped forward with a datapad. My lords, we've completed our study of human combat capabilities. The results are disturbing. They're fighting at less than 10% of their true capacity. The room fell silent. Finally, another counselor spoke. What do you mean, 10%? The analyst's hands shook as he read from his pad. Most of their advanced weapons remain unused. Their largest ships haven't left their solar system. Their quantum deletion technology has only been used in small bursts. They're not trying to destroy us. They're teaching us a lesson. On the main screen, footage played from recent battles. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck with surgical precision, and vanished again. Imperial fleets fired blindly at empty space, wasting resources and morale. Their artificial intelligence systems predict our moves before we make them, the analyst continued. They've studied us for decades. Every tactic we use, they've already planned for. And their stealth technology. It breaks every law of physics we know. Keth watched the Council's reaction. He had seen Earth's military archives. He knew what humans were capable of when they fought at full strength. The thought of facing that kept him awake at night. There's more, the analyst said. We've discovered they have entire weapon systems we've never seen. They've been preparing for alien contact for centuries. Their whole civilization is designed to transform into a war machine. An economic advisor stepped forward next. My lords, our military spending is bankrupting the empire. Our citizens are panicking. Trade has stopped. Worlds are declaring independence rather than face human attacks. We cannot sustain this war. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to commit every resource to the war. A few suggested using forbidden weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. Silence. Dex shouted. When quiet returned, he turned to Keth. Admiral, you've faced these humans. What are our options? Keth took a deep breath. My lords, we have 3 choices. First, we can surrender and accept their terms. Second, we can continue fighting and watch our empire crumble. Third, we can use our forbidden weapons and face whatever humanity has been holding back. They're barbarians, one counselor shouted. Look at their history. All they know is war. No, Keth replied quietly. That's what makes them so dangerous. They know war so well that they've learned to avoid it when possible. They warned us. They gave us chances to retreat. Even now, they're only hitting military targets. They understand something we don't. The true cost of total war. On screens around the chamber, reports continued to arrive. Another fleet ambushed. Another base vanished. Another world declaring neutrality. The Empire was facing something it had never experienced before. Defeat. My lords, Keth said, I believe we have only one real choice. We must negotiate. Not because humans have better weapons or tactics, but because they've mastered something we never understood: the wisdom of knowing when not to fight. The council chamber fell silent again. Centuries of Imperial pride warred with the reality of their situation. They had started this war thinking humans were primitive savages. Now they realized humans had been advanced enough to know that war should be the last resort. Finally, Dex spoke. "Send the message. Tell Earth we're ready to talk. And pray they're still willing to listen." The peace talks took place on neutral ground, a space station built specifically for this purpose at the halfway point between Earth and Imperial space. The station's design was purely human, and its very existence proved how long humanity had been preparing for this moment. Admiral Walker stood at the window, watching as the Imperial delegation's ship docked. Behind him, the human negotiating team waited calmly. They had replaced their military uniforms with formal diplomatic attire, but everyone in the room was still a trained soldier. "They're here," Lieutenant Davis announced from his position at the security console. "Scans show they followed our instructions. No weapons, no hidden devices." High Admiral Keth led the Imperial delegation into the conference room. He noticed immediately that the humans had arranged everything perfectly. The tables were designed for both human and Imperial body types. The lighting was comfortable for both species' eyes. Even the air mixture had been adjusted to suit both races. "Welcome to Peace Station," Walker said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. "We appreciate your willingness to talk." Keth had studied human customs. He knew what the handshake meant. Carefully, he reached out and took Walker's hand. "We appreciate your willingness to listen," he replied. The two delegations sat down. On screens around the room, representatives from both Earth and the Empire watched the historic moment. Billions of lives waited to see what would happen next. Walker spoke first. "Let me be clear. Humanity never wanted this war. We spent centuries preparing for it because we had to, but our goal was always to prevent conflict, not cause it. Yet you defeated us more thoroughly than any enemy in our history," Keth said. "Why show restraint? Why not simply conquer us?" Walker smiled. "Because that's the difference between knowing how to fight a war and knowing how to end one. We could have destroyed your empire. Instead, we chose to teach you why you shouldn't start wars you don't understand." The human admiral pressed a button, and a hologram appeared between them. It showed the galaxy, with Earth and the Empire highlighted. "We're not interested in conquest. We want peace, trade, and mutual respect. But we will never surrender our independence." Keth looked at the map. "Your weapons, your technology, they're beyond anything we've seen. How did you advance so far without leaving your solar system?" "Because we learned from our own history," Walker explained. "We fought our wars at home first. We made our mistakes where they couldn't hurt others. Every conflict taught us something. Not just about fighting, but about peace." The negotiations continued for hours. Borders were drawn. Trade agreements were discussed. Security protocols were established. But the most important parts weren't the formal treaties. They were the understandings reached between the two species. "There's one thing I don't understand," Keth said near the end. "Your quantum weapons, your stealth ships, your AI systems. You could have shown us these from the start. Why wait?" Walker's expression was serious. "Because technology isn't what makes a species strong. Understanding is. We needed you to learn who we really are. Not just what we can do, but why we do it." The final treaty was simpler than anyone expected. Earth's space would remain independent. The Empire would reform its expansion policies. Trade would begin slowly, with cultural exchange coming first. Both sides would work together to maintain peace. As the Imperial delegation prepared to leave, Walker handed Keth a small device. "This contains our full military history, everything we did, every mistake we made, every lesson we learned. Study it. Understanding war is the best way to avoid it." Keth took the device carefully. "And if others threaten Earth in the future, then we'll do exactly what we did with you," Walker replied. "We'll warn them to run. And if they don't listen? He smiled. Well, you know what happens then. The Empire's ships departed peacefully, returning to their space to begin rebuilding. On Peace Station, Walker watched them go. Humanity had just fought its first interstellar war, and they had won it the same way they had won their freedom on Earth, by being willing to fight if necessary, but wise enough to prefer peace. Send a message to Earth, Walker told Davis. Tell them Operation First Contact is complete, and tell them to keep watching the stars. We're not alone anymore, and we never will be again.